Hello everyone, today I'm going to continue telling you the story of 16-year-old single mother Diệu Hân. That morning, the air was still heavy with mist, and the first breeze of the day slipped through the leaves, carrying the earthy scent left behind by a long, damp night. After a restless sleep filled with dreams, Hân slowly opened her eyes. Her body still felt weighed down with fatigue, but her mind was somewhat relieved of the pressure that had burdened her the day before. She stepped quietly out onto the porch, letting her gaze wander across the small courtyard. The green of the shrubs and the tangled climbing vines suddenly made her feel the need to keep her hands busy, to stop her mind from wandering. Taking up her familiar pruning shears, she carefully clipped each branch that had grown too far into the path. Every trimmed branch was neatly stacked into small piles, to be laid out to dry and later burned, keeping mosquitoes at bay during the long rainy days ahead. Once she finished outside, Hân returned to the house. By the porch, little Tom sat cross-legged, busily shaping dry clay into quirky little figures. Scattered around him were a few faded, worn-out toys. The boy was now old enough to play on his own, allowing his mother to work without constant supervision. Hân bent down, wrapping her arms tightly around him, pressing her cheek against his sun-warmed hair. A wave of warmth welled up inside her, reminding her that, despite everything, the most precious thing was that Tom was still safe. Yet that comfort was quickly overshadowed by a creeping unease. An, the housemaid, had gone out early in the morning and still hadn't returned. To push away the anxiety, Hân went into the kitchen to prepare lunch. On the counter, bright red tomatoes, fresh green vegetables, and a portion of meat left from the day before waited to be cooked. She cracked several eggs from the coop, mixing them with finely chopped scallions and a pinch of salt, then poured the mixture into a well-heated cast-iron pan. The fire, fueled by the dry wood she had been collecting and sun-drying over the past few days, burned steadily, filling the kitchen with a gentle warmth. As she was arranging vegetables in a basket, Hân suddenly froze at the sound of a voice calling from the gate. The deep, clear tone broke the midday stillness. Looking out, she instantly recognized Mr. Tin, the commune officer, walking alongside a man in a police uniform. A sudden jolt of worry shot down her spine, and her hands stopped mid-motion in the water. She quickly dried them, her heartbeat quickening, wondering what awaited her beyond that gate. It was Mr. Tin, the commune officer, walking alongside a man in a police uniform. The moment Hân caught sight of them, her heart skipped a beat, and a wave of unease slipped into her chest. Wiping her still wet hands quickly on her shirt, she hurried to the gate, slid the latch open, and bowed slightly to invite them in. Mr. Tin wasted no time, his voice steady but tinged with solemnity. "I'm here today to ask you again about some details from the incident a few days ago. We need to verify everything carefully to complete the report." Hân nodded, quickly pouring water for the guests before sitting across from them. She recounted everything in one continuous flow, leaving out no detail, from the moment the two strange men broke in, restrained her, and ransacked every corner of the house, to the instant another man unexpectedly appeared and freed her from the dangerous situation. In her voice was the clarity of someone determined to cooperate fully, because more than anyone, she wanted the matter resolved quickly, to protect little Tom and keep peace in their small home. After listening in silence, Mr. Tin pondered for a moment, then spoke slowly. "You once asked me about someone named Diệu Hân, also known as Hoa, didn't you?" I looked into it. In the neighboring village, there was indeed a person by that name, but her family was buried in debt. Then one day, they all vanished without a trace. No one knows where they are now. The words made Hân's heartbeat quicken. Instantly, the image of An, her gentle, modest housemaid whom she had trusted completely, flashed in her mind. Could An and Diệu Hân be the same person? Could it be that An had once lived here, carrying a past Hân knew nothing about? Lowering his voice, Mr. Tin's gaze grew sharper. To be honest, I'm beginning to suspect your housemate. Since she arrived, trouble has followed your home one after another. There's no evidence yet, but we can't rule out the possibility that she's involved. Han froze for a moment, but didn't let her emotions take over. She drew in a deep breath and calmly replied. Han isn't that kind of person, Uncle. She lives honestly. If she had bad intentions, she wouldn't need to be roundabout, she could act whenever I'm away. And there's nothing in my house worth taking, anyway. Mr. Tin nodded slightly, his tone softening. I understand. But it's better to be cautious. We've assigned more patrols in this area. If anything unusual happens, call me immediately. After jotting down her statement and exchanging a few more words, the two officers stood up to leave. Han walked them all the way to the gate, watching as their motorbike disappeared behind the bamboo hedges. Inside her, a storm of thoughts churned. On one side was her trust in Han, on the other, the seed of doubt that had just been planted. The daylight grew brighter, the sound of birds blended with the gentle rustle of banana leaves behind the house. Yet Han's heart remained unsteady. A new day had begun, but her mind still felt trapped in questions with no answers. After leaving Han's house, Mr. Tin and the police officer didn't head straight back to the station but stopped by Ms. Men's home at the end of the alley. They knew she had been running a small grocery shop for years and lived close to Han's house, so there was a good chance she might have seen or interacted with strangers in the area. As soon as they stepped inside, Mr. Tin began. Ms. Men, have you seen any unfamiliar faces around here in the past few days? Even if they were just standing near your shop or stopping by to buy something, anything you can remember might help. Ms. Men was arranging baskets of goods out on the porch. Hearing the question, she paused to think for a moment before shaking her head. I get all kinds of customers, Uncle, locals I know, and strangers too, but honestly, I don't pay much attention. They buy what they need and leave, so I can't recall exactly who's who. Mr. Tin nodded slightly, his tone growing more serious. Then from now on, please keep an eye out for me. If you notice any strangers, or anyone acting suspicious, let me or the police know right away. This matter is very important. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Ms. Men nodded firmly. Yes, you can count on me. I'll be more observant from now on. Noting her promise, Mr. Tin and the police officer said their goodbyes and got back on their motorbike. They continued down the village's main road, turning deeper into the smaller lanes to gather more information, determined to track down the ones responsible for the incident at Han's house. On his way back after the meeting, Mr. Tin happened to run into Tan at the bend leading into the village. Spotting him, Mr. Tin stopped, struck up a conversation, and broke the news. Han's house had just been broken into by thieves. Hearing this, Tan froze in place, his eyes widening in shock. Since morning, no one had mentioned anything to him about it, so the sudden news sent a rush of heat through his chest. Mr. Tin didn't stop there, he gave a firm warning. Lately, there have been quite a few strangers showing up around here. If you see anything unusual, report it to me or the police right away so we can deal with it promptly. That warning only strengthened Tana's sense that he had to act immediately. He turned his motorbike around and sped straight to Han's house. Just minutes later, he was striding across the yard, his voice laced with concern. Han, are you okay? Did you get hurt anywhere? Seeing Tana's anxious face, Han was slightly taken aback but quickly smiled to reassure him. I'm fine, everything's over now. Still, Tan couldn't relax. He glanced around the house before suggesting without hesitation. Why don't you and Tom stay at my place for a few days? I don't think it's safe here. In his tone and his eyes, Han could clearly sense a special kind of worry for her, something more than polite concern, something quiet yet deep. She had to explain, reassure him, and promise to be careful before he seemed even partly convinced. "Play with Tom for a while, will you?" "I'll go finish cooking lunch," Han said softly but firmly. Tom nodded, then sat down on the floor with Tom, quickly getting drawn into the boys' mischievous games. The sound of bright, ringing laughter filled the front room, mingling with the rhythmic thud of the chopping board and the fragrant aroma of food drifting from the kitchen. From inside, Han occasionally glanced out, catching sight of Tom patiently helping Tom piece together wooden toy blocks, or pretending to be a monster just to make the child double over in giggles. In that moment, the scene felt strangely warm, like a real family. The corners of Han's lips curved upward, but her smile carried a quiet, heartfelt wish that Tom could grow up in the loving embrace of both a mother and a father, in a home that was whole and peaceful, free from the lurking fears that haunted them now. At that moment, on a narrow road leading to the market, Dan was strolling along when he caught sight of a familiar figure moving stealthily, as if trying to avoid being seen. Looking closer, he recognized Vi, the troublemaker who had already caused no small amount of chaos in the area. The thought of Vi's past deeds instantly put Dan on alert. He strode forward quickly, cutting him off and calling out loudly, "Vi! What are you up to this time?" Startled, Vi froze, a flicker of color draining from his face. His eyes darted about restlessly, as if searching for an escape. That nervous, uneasy demeanor didn't escape Dan's sharp gaze. Remembering the news of Anna's disappearance, combined with Vi's suspicious behavior, an ominous feeling began to rise within him. Dan didn't waste time with pleasantries, he pressed for answers directly. At first, Vi stammered and denied everything, but after a few rapid-fire questions, his composure began to crumble. Finally, under Dan's unrelenting pressure, Vi was forced to admit, the two thieves from the other day were hired by him, and they were the ones who had taken Anna away. Upon hearing this, Dan barked, "Take me there. Now." But before heading to the location, Dan decided to bring Vi to Han's house so Tom could be informed. As soon as they stopped at the gate, Vi immediately backed away, tension etched across his face. He still remembered the beating Tom had given him before and flatly refused to step inside, stammering about wanting to leave. The commotion outside caught Tana's attention from inside the house. He abandoned what he was doing and came out. One look was all it took for him to sense something was wrong. Dan went straight to the point. "This guy is the one who hired people to kidnap on." The moment the words hit, the blood in Tana's veins seemed to boil. He lunged forward, grabbing Vi by the collar, his eyes sharp and cold enough to pierce through. Vi panicked, hurriedly pleading, I swear I didn't mean to hurt her. At first, I just wanted to play the hero and save the damsel, so I hired those two guys to fake some trouble. But I didn't expect them to betray me, knock me out, and take on away. Now, I have no idea where she is." The anger boiling inside Tom finally erupted. He strode forward, gripping Vi's collar tightly, his eyes icy cold, his fist itching to release all his pent-up fury. But reason pulled him back. This wasn't the time to start a fight. Grinding his teeth, he growled each word. "Tell me everything. Don't hide a single detail." Vi trembled, avoiding Tana's gaze, but after several sharp, unrelenting demands, he was forced to spill everything he knew. When he finished, Tom turned to Dan, his voice firm. "Take him to the police. Now." The three of them were still arguing heatedly in the yard, their voices growing louder and louder. The noise drew Han from inside the house, her eyes full of questions. Seeing her, Tom tried to change the subject, not wanting her to worry. But Han wasn't so easily convinced. She had a strong feeling this had to do with On, and her unease deepened the longer her friend stayed missing. Just then, Vi leaned toward Ton, lowering his voice to make some kind of offer. Before he could finish, Vi, a neighbor, appeared out of nowhere and shoved Vi aside. Seizing the moment, Vi suddenly bolted, forcing Ton to sprint after him. They tore through a muddy alley, rainwater splashing up around them, until Vi, out of breath, came to a stop. Dan arrived moments later, pulling Ton aside and speaking urgently. "Forget Vi for now. We have to find On, she's in danger." The sky had turned a heavy gray, and the rain began to fall in thick, pounding drops. Without hesitation, Ton set off toward the abandoned house Vi had once used to keep On. Back at the house, Han was restless, pressing Dan for the full story. This time, Dan sighed and told Ton to be honest. Ton met her gaze, speaking slowly but firmly. "You need to stay calm. On has been kidnapped." Han froze, her mind spinning. They had just seen each other yesterday. How could things have come to this? Panic quickly gave way to fear, making her hands tremble. Ton and Dan urged her to stay behind and watch over Tom, but she shook her head, insisting, "I have to go with you." The argument dragged on until Ton finally relented, on one condition: Tom had to be left with Ms. Men for safety. With that agreed, Han rushed inside to prepare. Her worry for On made her clumsy, grabbing things hastily as she woke Tom. The boy, still groggy, rubbed his eyes in protest, but Han scooped him up and carried him outside, forgetting even to lock the door. Once Tom was entrusted to Ms. Men, the three of them set off. The rain grew heavier, turning the dirt road over the hill into a slick, treacherous mire. The motorbike wheels spun slowly, mud splattering up their pant legs, but no one dared to slow down. Ahead, the path to the abandoned house was shrouded in sheets of rain, thick mud, and steep turns, as if testing their resolve before they could find any trace of On. Dan drove Han and little Tom away from the path leading to the abandoned house, the motorbike's tires slipping over the slick mud and leaving streaks of dirty water in their wake. The rain still fell in a steady drizzle, each heavy drop soaking their clothes, but neither of them felt at ease. Both Han and Dan remained silent, the only sounds the strained growl of the engine and the wind whistling through the canopy overhead. Each was thinking about Ton, still alone in that desolate place. Dan glanced over and saw Han sitting behind him, arms wrapped tightly around Tom, her gaze fixed on the road they had just left. He spoke softly, as if to reassure her. "Stay calm. We don't know the exact situation yet. We'll have to wait for news from Ton. I'll alert the police right away so they can help search for On." Han only nodded, but her heart felt heavier than ever. Guilt and fear churned inside her. Part of her wished she had stayed to help Ton search, but when she thought of the pitch-black forest and the pounding rain, she knew going along might have only added to the danger. Still, the image of Ton alone in the storm tightened something deep in her chest. Meanwhile, Tom was blissfully unaware of the gravity of the situation. Sitting in his mother's lap, he played with her hands and chattered away with childish stories. But when he looked up and saw tears on her cheeks, he froze, his eyes wide and questioning, as if silently asking why she was so sad. At that same time, Ton was still combing the area around the abandoned house. The heavy rain bent tree branches sideways, pooling into deep puddles that made it impossible for him to push further into the forest beyond. He scanned the surroundings for any sign, but the downpour had erased every trace. Dan tried calling him, but the only reply was an automated voice: "The number you have dialed is unavailable." Ton stood still for a moment, then decided not to keep searching. Leaving Han and Tom alone for too long could be even more dangerous. Time crawled by, the rain tapping steadily on the eaves. Han sat on the doorstep, eyes fixed on the pitch-black road outside. She tried calling Ton again and again, but the same disconnected tone answered her each time. She and Dan agreed to wait a little longer, hoping he would return. It wasn't until late at night, when the whole village had fallen into deep silence, that Ton finally appeared. His footsteps were so quiet that Dan had to pay attention to notice them. Han had already dozed off in a chair, her face still bearing the traces of exhaustion. Ton looked at her for a moment, his gaze a mix of tenderness and worry. Pulling Dan aside, they spoke briefly and agreed to report to the police the next morning to officially launch a search for Han. Dan was about to leave, but Ton hesitated. Looking at the silhouettes of Han and Tom inside the house, he shook his head slightly. No. It's too dangerous to leave them here alone. In the end, they both decided to stay. Dan unrolled a mat on the porch, while Ton sat leaning against a wooden pillar, his eyes still on the road outside. The rain had stopped, but the damp chill seeped into their clothes. In the stillness of the night, only the sounds of insects and the steady breathing of a man keeping watch remained, waiting for the dawn, and with it, the hope of finding Anna's trail.
Hello, xin chào tất cả mọi người. Cảm ơn mọi người vì hôm nay mọi người lại một lần nữa quay trở lại với kênh của mình và xem video mà mình đã làm. Hy vọng rằng video của mình có thể truyền tải đến một số thông điệp ý nghĩa và tốt cho mọi người. Cũng mong rằng video của mình có thể góp một phần nào đó khiến cho mọi người có những khái niệm vui vẻ và tốt đẹp hơn về tình yêu và cuộc sống. Hy vọng rằng những câu chuyện có thể mang đến cho mọi người những giây phút vui vẻ hơn. Nếu như mà mọi người có ý kiến đóng góp gì cũng như là góp ý cho kênh thì mọi người hãy để ở lại ở phần bình luận mọi người nhé. Và đừng quên là hãy like, subscribe kênh và bật chuông thông báo lên để không bỏ lỡ bất kỳ video nào mọi người nhé. Và mọi người có thể để lại bình luận chúc phúc cho các nhân vật và mọi người cũng có thể góp ý để có thể hoàn thiện các nhân vật cũng như là cái cốt truyện có thể hay hơn và ý nghĩa hơn trong những tập sau. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều vì đã theo dõi đến đây. Bye bye.